Welcome. It's the FIH Pro League show. And today got two fantastic guests. We've got Soledad Vilar from Uruguay, fresh from the Hockey5s in Lausanne. Welcome to you. Hola.
Hi, hola for everybody. I'm happy to be here.
And we've also got Shea McAleese from New Zealand, former Black Sticks star, and now one of the coaching team for the New Zealand Black Sticks women. Hi, Shea.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
Absolute pleasure. And it's great to see you because I know you're on the verge of a big trip to Europe for a couple of big events. So thank you for taking the time out, and we'll be talking about that a bit later as well. But first of all, I mean, Soledad, we've got to talk about Uruguay's victory over the weekend in Lausanne, the inaugural FIH Hockey5s tournament. We're going to talk about it in more detail a bit later in the show, but just give us a little bit of a flavour of what it was like in Lausanne for that event.
Well, for us, it was amazing to be there. It was a great organization. Everything was fixed. We are seeing a hotel in front of the tournament, so everything was easy for us, to prepare all the matches, because it was only 2 days to play like around 5 matches. So it was really intense. And it was great, the Hockey5 for us. Now, of course, champion, but everything around was really nice to be there. And it's a new format. So for I think for all the team was a surprise. So we did we prepared a kind of game by game because we didn't know how was the other teams playing. But a lot of things to improve, I think. But it was really nice for us.
It was really good. And it was right in the middle of Lausanne, wasn't it? I mean, it was in a city centre, which is quite unusual for a hockey tournament because normally they are pushed to the outskirts.
I was in a really nice spot in front of the water. So, and I think for all the people in Lausanne, it was really nice to see a lot of people in the hockey because they aren't used to. I think Switzerland, I knew about that, about the country, is like a small country with not a lot of hockey. I think it's like kind of similar of like Uruguay. Yeah. So, I think for them, it's like for the future of the hockey, I think it was really nice for them to have this kind of tournament.
Fantastic. Before we talk more about the Hockey5s, it was also a really busy Pro League weekend, and there were some pretty fantastic matches that went on. Shea, I think you in particular were watching England-Netherlands, and of course England women, they're going to be one of your opponents in the pool stages of the World Cup. So first of all, I mean, two very different games. Give me your take on the two England-Netherlands games.
Do you want men or women first?
Let's go women first.
Women first. I was actually pretty impressed with how England, that they hadn't beaten, I think, the Dutch since 2003.
That's correct. In 19 years ago.
In normal play, obviously they beat the Dutch for gold in a shootout in 2016. So it was pretty special for the English women first and foremost to beat the Dutch. And to get one up over them doesn't come that often. I do know, obviously, that the Dutch didn't have a lot of their, probably what I would say, key mainstay players within that lineup. But whenever you play the Dutch, they probably got almost 4 international quality hockey teams that they can put out on the pitch. So you know that it's pretty special for them. And I thought, Maddie Hitch was very good in goal. I think she was celebrating her 100th test as well.
Correct,
so it's pretty special for her. And it was just from start to finish in that game, I thought it was just a pretty good game of hockey. And I'm watching pretty intently as well. So I'm not sure how much I probably want to give away in terms of this because we come up against a strong English outfit in the World Cup and our pool play as well. But I thought they were strong defensively. The Dutch have a very good give and go style game of hockey, and I thought they nullified that quite well, and particularly stayed with their player. And if you allow the Dutch to sort of imprint their game, and I'm not talking about what they do in the back 50, but if you allow the Dutch to imprint what they do in the front 50, that it's going to be a tough day at the office. But I think the English matched that, and then when they got their chances, they actually took them really well, particularly in the first game. Obviously, I think there was a bit of ebb and flow between game 1 and game 2, and the Dutch certainly, I think they wanted to rectify the result of game 1, but I still think it could have actually gone either way, and it was just a narrow win for the Dutch in that game. So from watching that game, like as a bit of a neutral, but also with one eye to trying to beat the English. I know that they're going to be a tough opposition, and I know that the Dutch will obviously be stronger come the World Cup when they bring a few of their key players back into the fold as well.
Yeah, I mean, if we just talk briefly about England first, I mean, we know some of those players very well. You know, we've seen the likes of Laura Unsworth, Shea McAleese, Holly Pern-Webb, and as you mentioned, obviously Maddie Hinch, who had, I thought, a couple of very good games. We're also seeing some of those younger players coming through and establishing themselves now as well, aren't we? And I thought Fiona Crackles and Izzy Petter were both quite impressive. We didn't learn so much about the Dutch because, like you say, you know, that's a team for the future. Felice Albers, though, in the second game, I thought really came into her own. But I was just going to ask you, actually, both of you, as coaches, Jamie Mulders as the head coach, he's got quite a tough job, hasn't he? Because he's got to balance the team that will be playing in the World Cup with the team that's coming through and making sure that he's keeping all of those players motivated. So I'll come to you first on that, Shea, but as a coach, how tough is that going to be for him to sort of, you know, work that and keep players in the fold?
Yeah, I think like if you've got a good culture, which I know that the Dutch do, and I know they pride themselves in making their way through the top team, you can actually have a really extended squad, and that drive is going to be there. And like I'll probably share a comment that I learned about the Australian men's team, which I think is very applicable to the Dutch women's team. So a comment that one of their players, I won't mention who, because we were talking one day over a beer just a couple of years ago, and I asked, he asked me who the toughest opposition was, and I think he knew who I was going to say, and I said Australia, and I said to him, who was your toughest opposition? And he said ourselves. So, you know, whenever they play each other, that they know that they're in for a really, really hard match. And I think the same goes for the Dutch women. You know, like I think in terms of women's hockey, and we've probably seen that for the last, I don't know, maybe 15 years or so, that they've been the pinnacle of the women's game. And it's because they've got so much depth. So I imagine that their internal competition is super, super strong. And you can see that in the Hoofdklasse that they're playing week in, week out as well. So it's just a lot of depth in there. And they know if you earn the right to play for the top team, you've earned the right to do it. And I think that obviously is a good headache to have for Yami, that he can bring players in that he knows are ready to go, but he'll also have one eye to building some depth. But that depth's already going to be there because the Hoofdklasse is, you know, it is basically almost international hockey week in, week out anyway. So I'm pretty confident that whichever team he ends up putting out on the pitch, they're going to do very, very well, and they'll be one of the teams to beat come the World Cup. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, Soledad, you're playing in Holland. You're playing for MOC in the Netherlands. What is it about the Dutch? You know, what is it about their league, about their structure, that just makes them capable of producing generation after generation of fantastic hockey players? I mean, you're there day in, day out with them.
Yeah, it's incredible to see that. I think it's part of the culture that they have, you know, this mentality. When they are young, they start to train hard until, you know, to become in Damascene or Damas and being a team. So I think here in the Netherlands, it's incredible how they feel the hockey and how is the organization, it's the club. Because the big problem is that they have many players and they don't have, like, for example, trainers, you know, quality of the trainers. So this is a big issue for them to the future, because there are more and more players, and they need to fix that to good trainers. But I think, well, if they keep training hard how they are doing in the top of the clubs, I think the national team, it's difficult to beat them.
Yeah. I mean, for you personally, how easy is it to take what you learn in Holland back to Uruguay? You know, because that must be something that's very, very important for you. You know, you're learning all the time, and then you take it back and you're trying to instill that in your national team yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, I think this was really nice, you know, to put my knowledge about here in the Netherlands, to put in the national team in only 3 days. So this was one of my big challenges to go to Uruguay and say, like, my experience playing and also coaching. But yeah, I think for Uruguay was also nice, you know, to help me there in the team. And what Uruguay has is, like, they are open to receive. So they are open to change or to receive different informations to become better. So this is what Uruguay did. I don't do too much. I think the coach did a lot with them. But yeah, in my experience, I say, you know, key things that they're important to focus. And this is what Uruguay did, like, focus all the match and play game by game in the Hockey 5.
Yeah, but also for you to take it back to your senior team as well, because you're a member of the senior team. It must be so important for the Uruguay 11-a-side team to have players going and getting these different experiences and bringing them back to the national team.
Yes, we have two more players. One used to play in Argentina. That is also a good level of hockey. We have another player that she's playing in Belgium in Dragons. That also she was there in the Hockey5. And I think, yes, to have different players in another country to put, the level of the hockey higher in Uruguay, I think is good. Yeah, I try to also to help other players to go out, to have the experience and also to bring to Uruguay, because I think this is the most important to bring back. And yeah, I think it's amazing, if all the players can have this kind of experience. But yeah, it's not easy because, well, in Uruguay, everything is so difficult. We try, the step that we did was so big, but we need, everything around. For example, accommodation, field. Well, we have the first water field last year.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a big step for us. But still, we need, different kind of quality on the hockey, because if you want to go to the first 10, you need this quality, that, New Zealand, Netherlands, they have it. But I think we are on the way.
Well, for me, it's a perfect hybrid. South American skill and talent with some Dutch pragmatism. You're gonna fly in the next few years. Let's go back to the Dutch and let's talk about the men now, Shea. I mean, I don't think I've seen so many 3D skills on display in such amazing quick succession as those two matches between England men and the Netherlands men. And actually, although Netherlands won both matches, England didn't even play badly, did they? They were a couple of really good games.
Yeah, I can go into a little bit more detail on these games because I'm not playing.
Go for it.
Like from a pure neutral standpoint, they were two very good games of hockey to watch. Even though, probably like scoreline, if you just woke up in the morning and you check BBC Sport and check out the score and it's 3-0 on one day and 6-3 on the other, you'd probably think that England weren't in with a shout, but it wasn't the case, as you said. I just enjoyed how good the games of hockey were, from back to front to back. Even the 6-3 game, there was saves from both keepers. It was just a very good game of hockey. And what I liked was seeing some outrageously talented goals. There was I think who was it? Hudemakers in the first game.
The ball from Europe Kroon where Hudemakers
that was in the second game, but even in the first game, the kid probably he's brought up playing tennis or something, because the ball came off the keeper and he patted it back from here. Then a feature of probably the men's game, I think, very much at the moment, but it's coming more and more into the women's game is the aerial game, and obviously his goal in the second game, aerial ball to Kroon, aerial ball Kroon to Hudemakers, and then bats it into the goal was something special. But who was it else? It was De Wilde's goal. The bank that in the top corner. That was special. But even in the first game, I think it set the tone for the way that the Dutch just showed their control, their skill. The corner that Kroon plucks out of the air off the keeper, and then just the patience that he showed to manipulate the ball, manipulate the defender, and get that ball back into space to be able to score a goal. Just the quality on show from the entire game and across both games was really, really good. I think probably the only thing that the English side would probably be disappointed at is going down early and basically in won both games. They scored. Wamadan scored in I think it was the second minute. Second or third minute. In the first game, and then obviously they conceded in the first 30 seconds of the second game. So anytime, as coaches, we would say that those key times of the game that you never want to concede in. They've obviously conceded a couple in there, and then there is a bit of a difference in mentality around chasing games and things like that. So I think that probably caused the English to try and chase. And I think they actually chased pretty well. The goal Banderak scored with Peter Scott's dribble, that dribble that I'm talking about is something I'm really trying to get my hockey players to do, where it's not so much just to eliminate laterally, but it's the forward movement after the elimination. So eliminate forward, and you could see that both the defenders that he beat, he actually beat them properly. And then that's the stuff we've been looking for Banderak a bit more of. Like we've seen his quality on the PC options, but just that finesse that he showed to be able to pick that ball up and then just send that ball on the goal was really, really good. And I think even though the game finished 6-3 and obviously the last goal was without a keeper, I thought the English were right in that game. It was 3-2 and they had a few chances here and there and then sort of got away from them, and then it's kind of could have come back, but they just didn't quite nail their chances. But I thought both teams, they obviously played really, really well. But for me, probably the way it's looking at the moment, the Dutch have put 4 pretty good performances out in a row. I'd say they'd be one of the form teams of global hockey at the moment.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, they're rotating players. So we saw 8 different players from the team that had played earlier against Argentina. The thing that I thought was the difference between the two sides, and actually I'm going to bring Soledad in on this one as well, because I think the difference between yourselves and the Swiss in the Hockey5s final was the calmness and the composure that made both the Dutch men and the Uruguay women look as though they had all the time in the world. And you picked out that moment from Jorrit Kroon, where he received the ball on the rebound on the penalty from the penalty corner, but then just seemed to have all the time in the world before he laid the pass off to do what he needed to do. That calmness and that composure on the ball, where does that come from? Is it just knowing each other, or is it, what is it? And I'll come to you first, Soledad, on that. How do you get that sort of composure to play the game that you want to play and take the pace out of the opponents in many ways?
Well, I think, for us, for the Uruguayan team, they know each other a lot. They used to play many years together, so they know each other. But yeah, about the Swiss, I think, is in the Hockey5 you need to, it's a must, because you need to keep the intense of the match on the game. So I think, us, what we did, because the Hockey5 is totally different in the 11 in this kind of things, we did like a kind of predefined predetermination of the change. So it was like already, on the bench, a paper, so the players knows when they need to switch and go to the field. And I think because it's like it's 4 players playing, so they know each other, and it's in total 9 players, 8 plus a keeper. And it's easy to them to know each other in this small field. But for us, for the coaches, I think the best what we did, and we were happy about that, is like we did a kind of paper, and the players know before with who they need to change. Yeah. So that was easy, to us to focus in the tactic and technique of the match. Because if you focus on the change, it's too much on the Hockey5. You can't.
So it's taking everything else away and allowing the players just to play and get to know each other. But going back to the Dutch game, I mean, literally these players, yes, they're fast, but so are England. And England like to play at high tempo, but the Dutch seem to control that tempo, Shea.
Yeah. I think we've actually got to give a lot of credit to Jeroen Dalmé here as well. Like he's pretty new, I would say, with that group, and I think he's bringing in a lot of young players and or low capped players, and he, as you said, he's rotating his group through really, really well. But I think a lot of the way a team plays is imprinted by the way that the coach coaches, and I think he's giving his players a lot of confidence in and around what he wants them to do on the pitch, and I think that's the first and foremost thing. And the way that they're playing, I would say I'd love to go watch one of their trainings, because I would say that their training intensity, what he's trying to do is surpass the intensity of what a test match is. So when you can do that in a training environment, whether you're restricting size and you're playing 6-on-6 and it's hell for leather, very, very quick hockey, what that then does is when you actually take it into 11-a-side game, you actually you have more time, and that's what I think is something I think that Dalmé would be imprinting in his group. So then when they come to 11-side games, that it is actually could be playing 5-side, that it is something that it gives them more time and the appearance of more time. And then, it's up to the individual to work on their skill level and bring it up to speed so that they can feel like they are comfortable when they are playing. But I certainly had the same impression when I was watching that game.
Yeah, I mean, they're beautiful to watch. And I've got to say, I mean, I know every single coach is a perfectionist, but Jerome Delmay, he takes that to a new level, doesn't he? Because his guys trooped off the pitch 2-0 up, I think, and he still wasn't happy with that. He wanted more from them. And, I think that's the mark of a fantastic coach. He's just demanding and pushing, which is great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Hockey5s, just a little bit more detail. You were over there in Lausanne, Soledad, but actually Hockey5s, it's a growing sport across developing countries, isn't it? So can you tell me, why is it so important to Uruguay, but also to the other South American countries, and the same for the Oceania countries as well? Why is it so important that people are able to access hockey through the Hockey5s format?
Well, I think it's good for us to win to a tournament, because we can show also, to the hockey world that we are competitive. Yeah. So I think the Hockey5 give to us opportunity, and I think not only to us, but maybe to teams that are not in the top, to show that, maybe because we need more, quality, what I say before about everything that is around, not only on the players. We need more quality on these things, but also we can see that we have potential players to become better. And I think the Hockey5 give this chance to teams that maybe they are not really on the top, to show that, they are competitive. So I think, it was nice to us to finish champion, because sometimes we are not champion, but we deserve, or not we deserve, but we train hard to be. But we can show that, because if you see we play against Argentina, that we are close to them, next to them in South America. And they are one step higher than us, Argentina.
Just to interrupt you for a minute, but you beat India and you beat South Africa in the Hockey5s. They're both ranked higher than you.
Yeah.
And they had some of their very, very experienced players there, didn't they? So that's really great play by Uruguay to do that.
Yeah, and this is what I mean about showing that, we can, in the hockey and in all the sport, you never know. But sometimes, when we play 11, is too big the difference. And in Hockey5, because of the time, it's only 2 times 10 minutes, and in a small field, that I think for teams that they are not really in the top, they can show that.
Yeah, so, fantastic.
I think Uruguay was example.
Yeah, and Shea, across in places like Vanuatu and Fiji and places like that, it's a chance for people to play the sport without needing the big pitch and everything that goes with it, isn't it? So it's a great way of actually just building the sports awareness of the sport, I guess.
Yeah, and for me, that's the beauty of where hockey is going. Like, I think at some stages it's been a bit unattainable for all emerging nations to actually play the sport, and it's just great for a sport that's not so difficult in terms of 11-a-side. It comes with different restraints, but playing 5-a-side hockey, the ball stays in play obviously majority of the time, and just allows people to go out and have a bit of fun. I think that's first and foremost with getting people to fall in love with our sport, is to get out there and enjoy themselves. And I think that's the cool thing which I see about Hockey5s, and it now has a pathway from an emerging nation that's just starting out all the way through to where Uruguay is now winning the Hockey5s recent tournament, which was pretty cool. So if we can build that pathway and keep it growing, I think it's all the better for our sport going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's steps to playing the full game. It's steps to, as you say, winning on the international stage, and also I saw that it's a chance for Uruguay to experience other forms of or other styles of play from other continents, isn't it? Because your team would not have necessarily played an Asian style before or an African style before, so that's important as well.
I think for sure that's important for us. And also to go to this kind of tournament, because I don't know what is the future of the FIH, but I think to have Hockey5 in the Olympics is also a big goal for us, because we see that we have results. So I think
So if we had 2 formats at the Olympics, that would be a great thing, because we could have, Netherlands and Argentina battling it out, Uruguay battling it out, and, more winners, more champions. Fantastic. Talking about playing other nations and going to other continents, Shea, you're obviously about to leave for the continent of Europe. It's going to be a really, really long trip for New Zealand, as you were explaining to me before the show began. Just talk to me a little bit about what have the next few weeks got in store for you and your New Zealand team.
Yeah, so it's as I said, it is a long trip to be leaving my wife and my daughter for 10 weeks. So it's the longest trip that New Zealand Hockey's ever embarked on, and it's not normal for us to do back-to-back events. So obviously we go to the World Cup first, but because we're a Commonwealth Games nation, we then go to the Commonwealth Games basically straight afterwards. So originally we're off to Spain. We have a 3-test series against Spain as a build-up in Terrassa, which is really good for us to experience what Terrassa will be for us as well. And then we head over to Amsterdam and Amstelveen, where our pool is placed. And we have a couple of warm-up games against Chile and the Netherlands, which again, I think 5 high-quality games leading into the World Cup will put us in good stead and give us a few good markers along the way for how we're tracking into the World Cup. And then obviously hoping all goes well, that we'll be back to Terrassa for the business end of the tournament. The tricky bit for us is to then have a bit of a hockey break and then also organise a hockey camp prior to going into Birmingham. So all that's a little bit up in the air with figuring out when we'll finish the World Cup. Hopefully it will be on the very last day. And then then we're off to Birmingham for the Commonwealth Games. And that's always a really good fun tournament. So in terms of the way that the New Zealand hockey, or New Zealand public in general, view sport, for our sport of hockey, it goes Olympics, Commonwealth Games, World Cup. Yeah. So that it's actually the way it is for our New Zealand public. If you ask a hockey person, it would be Olympics, World Cup, Com Games. But so it's a little bit messy for us. But we're looking forward to having 2 really good pinnacle events with a couple of new players on board for us and seeing how they all fare. And my first extravaganza as a coach as well, which should be good fun.
Yeah, well, we wish you a heap of luck in that. One thing we just forgot to mention, or I forgot to bring up, you've just been watching the Australia-New Zealand men in action. Can you give us a little bit of a snapshot of where those squads are right now? I mean, I know it's a little bit of a successful 4th test series for Australia, but New Zealand building, yeah?
Yeah. So just a rundown of scores for people that didn't know. So 8-1, 4-0, 4-1, 3-1 for Australia. So obviously a big score discrepancy. I think it was 19-3 over the 4 games. But the Australian team only has lost a couple of players from Tokyo. I had the luxury of being up in Auckland and watched the first test, and I watched them train the day before, and they played 11 on 11, and it was like watching 2 of the top 4 teams go at it in the world. That's how good the Australian squad was looking. Our New Zealand teams had a bit of high turnover, so we had 6 debutants in the first game, and so obviously we're finding their feet a little bit, and they haven't played an international game since Tokyo. So you can see all these Pro League games that have been going on and on and on. Our New Zealand team, we struggle probably to have the depth to do what Australia do week in, week out of playing high quality internal matches. So it's been a bit of an eye-opener for a lot of our boys what the step up to international hockey is, especially against probably the world's best team or one of the top 3 teams in the world. But the good thing about the NZ boys is they dug deep, they stuck in and got better and better each game. So even though the scores probably reflected that in a way, it was actually really relevant in the actually watching the games that they earned some corners, they had shots on goal, their intent, their gameplay was a lot better. The Australian team is looking slick. And I would say they are probably the team to beat at the Commonwealth Games for sure. And they'll be, one of those teams that will be definitely a favourite for a medal come World Cup in India later in the year, in January 2023.
I was about to say to you, the New Zealand guys have got a lot of time before the World Cup, but bearing in mind what you said about the Commonwealth Games and its importance, they need to get the learning hat on quite rapidly, don't they, to make sure they're competitive?
Yeah, we do. We've got probably our 4 best hockey players they're playing in the German league, and they're in the semi-finals with Polo Hamburg. So they'll obviously make a big difference for our group coming back in, which will be really good for the boys just to have 4 high quality hockey players come back in. But it's obviously always going to be tough for Commonwealth Games. You've got Malaysia, Pakistan, India, England, Wales, Scotland, Australia. It's actually quite a competitive little event, and really good for our boys to probably test themselves out in a tournament and as a pseudo build-in as well for the World Cup. And for Greg Nicol, who's a brand new head coach to the men's team, to refine his squad and figure out who's got their medal to put their hand up to go to the World Cup in January.
Brilliant. Well, safe travels.
Yeah,
with your team, and good luck with everything. Soledad, what's next for you? What's next for Uruguay?
Well, for Uruguay, we have the South America games in October, but that is 11 because now Hockey5 we don't know yet what is coming because it's new for everybody. So I think we don't know the schedule about the Hockey5 in the future. But about 11, we have the South American games. So yeah, looking forward for that.
And when do you head back to Uruguay for that? Because you obviously are full time in Holland now, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, now next week we finish here in the Netherlands, but we don't know yet. When I'm coming back, I think in July I will be in Uruguay for sure.
Right. So you're not hanging around to watch the World Cup. You're heading back to Uruguay.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'm going to watch one game, the first day here in Amsterdam, but then I'm coming back. Yes.
Well, good luck in the South American Games. Good luck, Shea, with everything that your team has got ahead of it. And thank you both so much for spending the time talking to us today. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thanks for
good luck, Soledad.
Good luck.
Check it out.